Hello, welcome to today's video. My name is Aila and I will be discussing how Artemisia Gentileschi depicts female strength in her paintings. I'll focus on two of her works, Jael and Sisera and Esther and Ahasuerus. Both these works portray biblical stories and women using their strengths in different ways, one through bold action and the other through bravery and courage. Let's begin with who Artemisia Gentileschi was. She was a famous Italian painter from the 1600s during the Baroque period. At that time, it was really rare for women to become successful artists. However, Artemisia didn't just succeed in her art. She stood out with her paintings so dramatic and emotional, and often focused on strong female characters, mostly from the Bible or mythology. Instead of showing women as weak or helpless like many male artists did, she showed them in powerful and smart positions. So why did I choose these paintings? Well, Jael and Sisera and Esther and Ahasuerus show two different kinds of strengths as mentioned before. Jael is physically strong. She takes violent actions. Esther, on the other hand, shows more strength through confidence and calm. Artemisia's painted both stories in ways that made women look real and heroic, each in their own way. So beginning with visual analysis of Jael and Sisera, it is an oil on painting canvas. Her color palette is mostly warm with lots of yellows in Jael's dress, for example, and some reds in Sisera's shirt. The composition of the two are very condensed. Even if Sisera wakes up, there is no way for him to move, which heightens the amount of drama. Even as the viewer, we are put up and close to witness the act. Composition isn't the only dramatic effect at play here. Gentileschi also used strong lighting contrasts between the lights and the darks of the painting, which was very common at the time. The light shines brightly on Jael's hand, which leads our eye to the hammer and then to the peg being driven into Sisera's head. The background is much darker, guiding our focus on the two figures of the painting. She uses a technique called chiaroscuro to bring more realism to the painting as well. Using this technique means that rather than using lines to outline the figures, she uses lighting and color to just imply the line rather than to draw one out. In the story of Jael and Sisera, Jael kills an enemy officer while he sleeps. She drives the tent peg through his head to protect her people. The interesting thing is, Gentileschi's painting, Jael is focused, she is calm, she is in control of the situation. She doesn't look scared, but determined and focused. Art historian Mary Gerard talks about how powerful this painting is. She says that most male artists made Jael look unsure or guilty of her actions. But Gentileschi paints her as strong and confident. That's a big deal, especially during a time where women were expected to be quiet and obedient. Now, moving on to Esther and Ahasuerus. Like our last work, this is also an oil painting on canvas. There is a graceful flow of curved lines, especially in Esther's figure. Her swooning gesture forms a sweeping arc, giving a sense of movement, and with that, also elegance. Ahasuerus' upright position adds contrast to that, giving the scene a mix of softness as well as tension. With the lighting, Esther is the main dramatic subject. She glows as she poses, the light hitting directly on her skin. She uses soft shadows around the king and the background to create space and depth without overwhelming his actions. There is a great balance in the composition in the painting as well. The figures are evenly on each side of the canvas, Esther leaning back, and it's directly complemented by the king leaning forward to create a harmony between the two. Now that we see what's happening in the painting, let's talk about the story. In this story, Queen Esther risks her life by going to the king without even being invited, which, by the way, could get her killed. But she does it anyways. Why? To save her people. In Gentileschi's version, Esther looks elegant but nervous, as one would be. She reaches out in this dramatic pose, and it looks like she might faint. But the moment is powerful because we know she is doing something brave. As a reminder, she is showing up to the king unannounced, and the expression on the king's face seems surprised, intrigued, and maybe even impressed. As I mentioned before, Gentileschi showed strengths in many forms, and art historian Whitney Chadwick points that out. Esther isn't fighting with weapons like Jael did, but she's taking a big risk. Chadwick says that Gentileschi helped change how women were seen in art, not just as pretty faces, but as real, smart, and brave individuals. So now we know who these two women are that are being depicted, and we know that they both show strengths in different ways. Jael taking direct action and uses force. Esther uses her voice and her courage to stand up for others. Gentileschi shows that women can be strong in more than one way. That's what makes her work so interesting. She doesn't paint women as just victims or background characters. She shows them as real people making big choices. They are not just shown as objects with the only meaning behind them being beauty or lust, but with a purpose. Gentileschi's art is powerful because it tells something deeper. Women have always been a part of important stories. They just weren't always the ones who got the credit. More so seen as background characters. In fact, Dr. Jessie Locker says that she often painted women during points in their lives, moments when they made big, brave decisions. That idea is clear in both Jael and Sisera and Esther and Ahasuerus. In both paintings, the women are the center of the story. They are not just there, they are doing something that matters. So, to wrap this up, Jael and Sisera, Esther and Ahasuerus both show how Artemisia Gentileschi gave women the spotlight in a time where women were looked down upon. Whether they were being bold and physical like Jael or calm and brave like Esther, these women were strong in their own ways. Gentileschi's art reminds us that there is not just one way to be strong, and thanks to her, we get to see these powerful women through the eyes of someone who understood that understood what it meant to stand up and be heard, even when the world tries to silence you. Thank you.